Till 2025, they held the record for the best win percentage in NBA history. Their coach, Greg Popovich, is the winningest coach of all.
Popovich is not the Spurs. He's the NBA.
From 1997, when they've drafted the best power forward ever.
A lot of other people say Tim Duncan is the greatest power forward to ever play the game. I agree with that.
2017, the San Antonio Spurs won 50-plus games in 17 consecutive non-lockout seasons.
Never beat themselves, and that is exhausting for the other team.
For 20 years, the Spurs were a synonym for excellence, discipline, teamwork, unselfishness, and finding great players in the draft. We used to call it the program, but how did the Spurs maintain that level of success for that long? This is the story of the Spurs way and how one small market team became the longest 10-year dynasty in NBA history. The Spurs were founded in Dallas in 1967 and were named the Chapels, competing in the ABA. In 1973, the franchise relocated to San Antonio and was renamed the Spurs. 3 years later, they were one of 4 ABA franchises that joined the NBA when the leagues merged, but unlike the Pacers and the Nets, who struggled for years after joining the NBA, the Spurs hit the ground running, qualifying for the playoffs in 7 consecutive seasons. Led by the Iceman George Gervin, the Spurs made 3 conference finals in that span, with Gervin winning for scoring. When legends like George Gervin and big man Artis Gilmore aged out and departed, the Spurs missed the playoffs for only the 2nd time in their franchise history.
San Antonio Spurs select David Robinson from Navy.
But their misfortune brought a major reward, the first overall pick in the 1987 NBA draft. With the first pick in the 1987 NBA draft, the San Antonio Spurs select David Robinson from the United States Naval Academy. After fulfilling a 2-year military commitment, the Admiral finally joined the Spurs, and his impact was immediate. In the 1989-90 season, San Antonio jumped to 56 wins, a stunning 35-win improvement from the year before, setting a record for the largest single-season turnaround in league history. With a core of David Robinson, Terry Cummings, and Sean Elliott, the Spurs emerged as a constant.
I don't even know how I can say it with a straight face, but I thought it most of the time I defended him pretty well. The man just played, as well as I've seen anybody play in a long time.
And playoff presence. However, despite Robinson collecting numerous personal accolades, they struggled to reach the NBA Finals, even after adding the volatile but effective rebounder Dennis Rodman. San Antonio's deepest playoff run came in 1995, when they were thoroughly beaten in the Western Conference Finals by Hakeem.
I have the opportunity to accept this challenge and work with the Spurs, and the only guarantee I'll make is that I'll work with every fiber of my body to make the situation more successful than it already is.
Everything shifted for the San Antonio Spurs during the 1996-97 season, when devastating injuries sidelined both David Robinson and Chuck Person, the team's best shooter. The Spurs dropped 15 of their first 18 games, prompting the firing of head coach Bob Hill. In his place stepped in an unfamiliar name, Greg Popovich. I'm honored to take on this challenge and lead the Spurs. I won't promise results, but I will give everything I have to improve this team. Popovich had been serving as the team's general manager and had never been a head coach in the NBA. San Antonio ended the season with just 20 wins. Yet this dismal record turned out to be a blessing in disguise. They secured the top pick in the 1997 NBA draft.
The San Antonio Spurs select Tim Duncan from Wake Forest.
So it really strengthens rebounding-wise, shot blocking, overall defense, obviously, and he also can score. So it brings back another scorer on the court. So it makes us a pretty dangerous club because we can attack from a lot of angles.
Popovich already had someone in mind. Before finalizing his decision, Pop did something highly unconventional. He flew to the US Virgin Islands to meet a quiet 21-year-old college star. For 3 days, Popovich and the young man spent time walking the beach, discussing family, values, and life, everything but basketball. When Pop returned to Texas, he was certain Timothy Theodore Duncan was the future of the franchise. With the first pick, the San Antonio Spurs select Tim Duncan from Wake Forest University. Duncan's arrival was transformative. In his rookie year, he averaged 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks per game while shooting 55%. The Spurs improved by 36 wins, once again setting a new NBA record for the biggest single-season turnaround. Duncan was named Rookie of the Year, made the All-NBA first team, and finished 5th in MVP and Defensive Player of the Year voting. Dominant didn't even begin to describe his rookie season. After beating the Suns in the first round, they were outmatched in the second round by the deeper Utah Jazz. Popovich realized something. The Spurs had elite size but lacked perimeter shooting. To address this in the lockout-shortened 1999 season, he brought in sharpshooters Mario Elie and Steve Kerr. With these additions, the Twin Towers Duncan and Robinson had reliable kickout options, and their presence inside made the paint nearly impenetrable. The Spurs led the NBA in defensive rating and finished with the league's best record, 37-13. San Antonio lost just once on the road to the NBA Finals, where they faced the New York Knicks, the first 8 seed to make the finals. But the Knicks were without their star, Patrick Ewing, and were no match for Duncan's dominance. Timmy averaged 27 points and 14 rebounds, leading the Spurs to a 4-1 victory and earning Finals MVP after the series. Popovich humorously told Knicks coach Jeff Van Gundy, "I've got Tim and you don't. That's the difference." In the 2000 season, both Duncan and Robinson were all-stars and made the All-NBA team. But Duncan's late-season knee injury derailed their playoff hopes as they were knocked out by the Suns in the first round. By 2001, the Spurs were back on top. Best record, best defense, and Duncan finishing runner-up for MVP behind Allen Iverson. They cruised through the first 2 playoff rounds but were thoroughly outclassed by Shaq and Kobe's Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. That offseason, Sean Elliott retired, and David Robinson's career was nearing its end. Popovich knew it was time to rejuvenate the roster with younger talent that led to the 2001 NBA draft, where the Spurs selected a skinny, little-known French point guard. The San Antonio Spurs select Tony Parker from Racing Club Paris. The rest of the league scoffed. At the time, European players were considered soft and unprepared for the NBA. But San Antonio thought differently, valuing fundamentals and basketball IQ traits European systems developed from a young age. Spurs owner Peter Holt wasn't among the league's billionaire class. He, Popovich, and assistant GM R.C. Buford had to be smarter with limited resources. They couldn't afford superstar free agents, so they focused on intelligent, coachable, high-character players who were undervalued by the rest of the NBA. They also prioritized development over stardom. While stars were flashy, they often came with ego. In contrast, underdeveloped players were moldable and eager to buy into a team-first mentality, a cornerstone of the Spurs Way. A key contributor to this culture was Chip Engelland, perhaps the NBA's best shooting coach, who transformed average players into confident shooters. What set the Spurs apart was the unity at the top. Coaches and front office staff collaborated deeply. "RC and I have done everything together," Pop said. "We argue, plan, drink wine, and move on, always together." This alignment led to consistently smart drafting. In 2001, the Spurs added Steven Jackson and Bruce Bowen, a gritty defensive specialist who had bounced around for nearly a decade. Undrafted in 1993, Bowen became the NBA's first true 3-and-D wing, the perfect complement to Duncan. In 2002, Duncan delivered his most dominant season, 25.5 points, 12.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and 2.5 blocks per game, earning him his first MVP award. The Spurs won 58 games, but once again couldn't get past the Lakers. Falling in the second round at summer, R.C. Buford was officially promoted to general manager and made one of the greatest draft picks ever. With the 57th pick in the 1999 NBA draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Manu Ginobili from Argentina. Yes, Manu Ginobili. When the pick was made, even Spurs fans were confused. "I was like, who? Emmanuel Ginobili, who did we just pick?" A team insider recalled. But by 2002, Manu was dominating Europe, collecting every trophy imaginable and leading Argentina to silver at the FIBA World Cup, including a group stage victory over Team USA. Buford, who had scouted him early, brought Ginobili to the Spurs for the 2002-03 season. Meanwhile, Tony Parker, after a shaky rookie year, had blossomed in his second season, a result of San Antonio's rare patience. Other franchises wouldn't have started or trusted an unknown teenager like Parker, but the Spurs did, playing him 29 minutes per game as a rookie, setting him up for success in year 2. Ginobili, however, was a different animal. He was chaotic, unpredictable, and unlike anyone Pop had coached. Half the time, even Manu didn't. "You know what he was going to do," Pop said. "He drove me crazy, took 5 years off my life. But I realized I couldn't change him, so I let him play." And Manu's madness worked. His unique flair and instinctive play added something the Spurs had been missing: unpredictability. With the rise of Parker and Ginobili, a sharp young point guard named Speedy Claxton, and their seasoned leadership, the Spurs were ready for the next chapter. With forward Steven Jackson, the Spurs had the perfect blend of youth and veteran leadership. Veterans like David Robinson, Steve Kerr, and Steve Smith brought stability, but everything revolved around Tim Duncan. At age 26, in his 6th NBA season, Duncan had hit his prime, the ideal mix of athleticism and experience. He delivered another MVP-worthy campaign, averaging 23 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks per game. Duncan led San Antonio to the league's best record. After defeating the Suns in the second round, the Spurs ran into a familiar foe, the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, who had eliminated them in back-to-back seasons. But this time, the Spurs were deeper and more balanced on both ends of the floor. They outlasted the Lakers in 6 games in the Western Conference Finals. The Spurs handled Dirk Nowitzki and the Mavericks in 6 games, punching their ticket to the NBA Finals, where they met the New Jersey Nets. Although the Nets were tough, led by elite point guard Jason Kidd, they had no answer for Duncan. In the decisive Game 6, Duncan put up 20 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, and 8 blocks, one of the most dominant finals performances in history, nearly a quadruple-double. The Spurs were crowned 2003 NBA champions, and Duncan, who averaged 24 points, 17 rebounds, and 5 assists, was named Finals MVP after the championship. Both David Robinson and Steve Kerr retired. Steven Jackson departed after contract talks fell apart, a controversial decision, as he had played a key role in clutch moments. However, Popovich, known for putting the system above individual players, didn't believe anyone was bigger than the team. Despite losing 6 players from the championship roster, the Spurs stuck to their culture of identifying talent that fits their system. They added international players Hedo Turco, Lou and Rasho Nestorovic, along with Robert Horry, one of the most clutch playoff performers in league history. The 2004 Spurs continued their strong form, boasting the NBA's best defense, and finishing with the third-best record overall. They swept the Grizzlies in round 1 but ran into a retooled Lakers squad with 4 future Hall of Famers. LA got revenge and eliminated San Antonio in 6 games. The core remained the same in 2005. Duncan, Parker, Ginobili, and Bowen. Duncan's stats slightly dipped, as Popovich became the first coach to implement load management for his stars. None of the 4 main players averaged more than 32 minutes per game. This strategy had 2 benefits: fresher legs for the playoffs and increased confidence for role players who got extended minutes. The Spurs finished the season with 59 wins and, for the 4th time since Duncan's arrival, led the NBA in defense. But for the first time, they didn't rely solely on Timmy for scoring. Against the Nuggets in round 1, Manu Ginobili led all scorers. In round 2 versus the Sonics, Duncan took over again. In the conference finals against Steve Nash's Suns, the Big Three averaged a combined 70 points, and the Spurs advanced in 5 games. In the NBA Finals, the Spurs faced the defending champion Detroit Pistons, a physical, grinded-out team. Just like them, it turned into a slugfest. The 100-point barrier was broken only once in the 7-game series. In Game 7, Duncan made a bold declaration in the locker room: "We're not losing this game." He backed it up with 25 points, while Ginobili added 23 and Robert Horry hit key 3-pointers, giving San Antonio an 81-74 win and another title. Duncan earned his 3rd Finals MVP. In 2006, the Spurs won a franchise-best 63 games, and after beating the Kings in 6, faced the Mavericks. Despite Duncan's epic 41 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists in Game 7, Dallas prevailed in overtime. It was a crushing loss, where many franchises would overreact. Reshuffling half the roster, San Antonio stayed the course. They didn't panic. It wasn't the Spurs way. For 2007, they kept their core intact and added international depth with Fabrizio Oberto, Beno Udre, and Francisco Elson. It paid off. The Spurs won 58 games, had the best net rating in the NBA, and featured the deepest roster in the league. Meanwhile, their biggest rival, the Mavericks, were stunned in the first round by the We Believe Warriors. In the second round, the Spurs defeated the 7 seconds or less Suns, thanks in part to a controversial suspension of Amores and Boris Diaw after beating Utah in the conference finals. The Spurs returned to the NBA Finals, this time against LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. At just 22, LeBron had carried a mediocre squad to the finals. But outside of James, no Cavs player averaged more than 12 points per game, and San Antonio's suffocating defense overwhelmed Cleveland in a clean 4-0 sweep. Tony Parker averaged 24 points and became the first European-born player to win Finals MVP with 4 championships in 8 years. The Spurs dynasty was cemented, but they weren't done even as signs of decline began to appear in 2008. They lost to Kobe's Lakers in the Western Finals. In 2009, they fell to Dallas in round 1. In 2010, they were swept by the Suns, who finally got payback. In 2011, the Spurs bounced back to win 61 games, but were stunned in round 1 by the Grizzlies, the first No.8 seed to beat a No.1 since 2007. Many questioned if the Spurs run was over. Duncan was 35, Manu 34. During a game against the Sixers, Popovich rested Duncan and famously listed the reason as DNP old. But the Spurs weren't ready for the junkyard just yet. The key reason: Tony Parker, now 29, had entered the prime of his career. Once known only for his speed and handles, Parker had become a deadly mid-range shooter. Thanks to years of work with Chip England, his spin move was unstoppable, and his floater one of the league's most reliable. In 2012, he finished 5th in MVP voting and earned All-NBA second-team honors. But San Antonio's true revival came from a new face, a quiet kid with enormous hands and a weird laugh. Kawhi Leonard. To acquire Kawhi, the Spurs traded Pop's favorite player, George Hill, a surprising move. Kawhi was raw, a tweener without a defined offensive role. But Popovich saw something: a chance to develop the next Bruce Bowen, a defender who could hit spot-up threes. Leonard was inserted into the starting lineup halfway through his rookie year and never looked back. He was already locking up top wings and grabbing steals with his freakish wingspan and defensive instincts. What shocked everyone was how quickly he improved his shot, becoming one of Chip England's finest students. The Spurs also found other hidden gems in classic fashion. Patty Mills' 55th pick, Danny Green 46th pick, Boris Diaw, revived after being cut by Charlotte, Thiago Splitter, Matt Bonanen were big names, but all fit the system perfectly. The Spurs finished the 2012 season with the best record in the West, swept the Jazz and Clippers, but fell to OKC in the conference finals as Durant, Westbrook, and Harden powered the Thunder past them. In 2013, with more experience under their belt, the Spurs steamrolled the competition, losing only 2 games. On the way to the NBA Finals, their opponent, the Miami Heat, led by LeBron James, Dwyane Wade, and Chris Bosh, the Spurs were up 3-2 in the series and held a 5-point lead with under a minute left in Game 6. The Larry O'Brien Trophy was already being wheeled out. NBA staff had begun placing the stage for the celebration. A desperation three-pointer by LeBron James cut the Spurs' lead to just 2. On the following possession, San Antonio hit only 1 of 2 free throws, giving Miami a final chance to tie the game. Rebound Bosh back out to Allen. His 3, it's good. Tie game. With 5 seconds left, Ray Allen buried one of the most iconic shots in NBA history, sending Game 6 into overtime. The Heat seized the moment, won in OT, and forced a Game 7. In the deciding game, Tim Duncan missed a point-blank layup that would have tied it. On the next possession, LeBron buried a dagger mid-range jumper over Kawhi Leonard, securing back-to-back championships for Miami. Manu Ginobili struggled throughout the series, and at age 37, Duncan appeared to finally slow down, analysts declared. The Spurs finished believing their last shot at a title had slipped away, but as they had done so many times before, the Spurs proved everyone wrong. They added Italian sharpshooter Marco Bellinelli, expanded Kawhi Leonard's role in the offense, and completely revamped their playing style. This evolution showcased the brilliance of Greg Popovich. In the early years of the Tim Duncan era, the Spurs played slow, gritty basketball, dragging games into the mud, funneling opponents into the paint where Duncan served as a defensive wall. But as Duncan aged and could no longer cover ground the same way, the Spurs shifted toward a pace and space system, a European-inspired offense built on ball movement, spacing, and selflessness. Everyone has to pass. Everyone has to think. Everyone has to defend, said Boris Diaw. You don't just have a shooter who only shoots. Every player on the Spurs has to do a bit of everything. That mindset starts young in Europe. Coach Mike Brown, a former Popovich assistant, echoed the sentiment. Pop is an innovator. He's always looking ahead. He never rests on what worked yesterday. While many believed the Spurs were washed, San Antonio lit the league on fire, finishing with the NBA's best record and best net rating. Their top scorer, Tony Parker, averaged just 16.7 points per game. But in true Spurs fashion, 8 players averaged over 9 points, making the offense unpredictable and unguardable. They dispatched Dallas, Portland, and Oklahoma City en route to a finals rematch with Miami. This time, the Heat were outmatched from the opening tip. The Spurs' quick passes, off-ball movement, and relentless ball sharing shredded Miami's traps. San Antonio shot a blistering 53% from the field and 47% from 3, winning the series in 5 games. Kawhi Leonard, thanks to his lockdown defense and jaw-dropping efficiency, 61% from the floor, 58% from deep, was named Finals MVP. But this wasn't a one-man show. It was team basketball at its finest, arguably the most beautiful style of play the league has ever seen. The following season, at age 39, Tim Duncan made the UL-NBA team, while Kawhi blossomed into a star, winning Defensive Player of the Year. But in the playoffs, the Spurs were edged out in 7 games by the Clippers, led by Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. In the offseason, San Antonio made an uncharacteristic move. They signed a marquee free agent, LaMarcus Aldridge. The move paid off immediately. The Spurs won a franchise-best 67 games, posting the 3rd highest net rating in league history. But after a first-round win over Memphis, they were outplayed by the Thunder, and Tim Duncan played his final NBA game. It's rare for a team to adopt the identity of its star, said Boris Diaw. But Tim's humility, team-first attitude, and dedication became who we were as a franchise, and that made us better for a very long time. Even without Duncan, and with Parker and Ginobili aging, the Spurs still won over 60 games. Kawhi Leonard, now fully evolved, averaged 25 points per game and was in the conversation for best player in the NBA. He was, in many ways, Duncan 2.0, stoic, work-focused, ego-free, and obsessed with winning. In the 2017 playoffs, San Antonio met the Golden State Warriors, stacked with talent including Kevin Durant. In Game 1 of the conference finals, Kawhi was the best player on the floor, and the Spurs led by 21 points in the 3rd quarter. Then came the moment that changed the franchise's future, as Pachulia stepped under Kawhi Leonard as he landed on a jump shot, causing Leonard to badly injure his ankle. He was ruled out for the series. Without him, the Spurs were swept hand. That would be Kawhi's final playoff game in a Spurs uniform. In the 2018 season, Kawhi played only 9 games. Due to a lingering quad injury, tensions rose as Leonard and his camp grew frustrated, believing the Spurs had mishandled his recovery. He stopped communicating with the team and requested a trade. San Antonio was forced to move on, though they still reached the playoffs in 2018 and 2019. The golden era had officially ended after 2 decades of unprecedented success. The San Antonio Spurs dynasty came to a close, built on smart ownership, elite coaching, unmatched player development, and the greatest power forward of all time. The Spurs accomplished what seemed impossible in the modern NBA: 20 consecutive winning seasons, navigating the salary cap era, free agency, and player movement with grace and consistency. The only dynasty with similar longevity. The New England Patriots, coached by Bill Belichick, led by Tom Brady, who, like the Spurs, thrived thanks to a strong culture, relentless focus on improvement, and total alignment from top to bottom. Perhaps no player epitomized the Spurs way more than Manu Ginobili, who selflessly came off the bench for years, despite having the talent to be an all-star starter on any other team. The Spurs built a culture of humility, sacrifice, and accountability. No drama, no shortcuts, no one above the team. That's why they were the longest-lasting dynasty in NBA history.